ADR. Promoting dialogue.
It's 12 o'clock in Dakar and Banjul, 1 o'clock in Abuja. Good afternoon, and many thanks for staying tuned to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and around the world on wadr.org. This is Newslink. Here are the top stories. Amnesty International condemns the crackdown on demonstrations in Togo and calls for urgent independent investigation. Mali's transitional parliament grants military renewable 5-year mandate in major political shift.
It is an immature, thoughtless decision that does not engage the Malian people. It confirms that we are in a dictatorship. So for our part, as political actors, we do not recognize Assimi Goïta as president of the Republic of Mali.
The ECOWAS pre-election mission in Côte d'Ivoire concludes assessment tour ahead of October 25 polls. And regional experts anchor the U.S. 5 African Nations Summit Economic and Resource Control Agenda.
That's to say, help America take advantage as much as possible of the resources in West Africa, especially as we have gas and oil in Senegal, and we have gas and oil in Mauritania. This is one of the reasons why Mauritania has been chosen.
Please stay tuned for details of these stories and more.
West Africa Democracy Radio. It's you speaking.
My name is Sankule Jibril Janko. Many thanks for joining our broadcast. Newslink begins in Togo because Amnesty International is calling on authorities there to end what it described as the unnecessary and excessive use of force against protesters in Lomé. This comes amid a violent crackdown on demonstrations since June 26. The Right Group Watch says it interviewed 18 people, including victims and witnesses, some of whom describe police violence, arbitrary arrests, and mistreatment. Francis Boniface has the rest of the story.
Amnesty International has condemned the Togolese authorities for what it calls the unnecessary and excessive use of force against protesters in Lomé, following violent crackdowns that began on June 26. The rights group interviewed 18 victims and witnesses, with many reporting police brutality, arbitrary arrests, and abductions. Some detainees, including minors, claimed they were tortured and denied food and water. At least 7 people, including children, were found dead in rivers and lagoons, with civil society organizations reporting signs of gunshot wounds and beatings. Amnesty is calling for urgent and independent investigations into allegations of killings, torture, and disappearances. The protests, declared illegal by authorities, were sparked by growing anger over political repression, constitutional changes, and the high cost of living. Despite government claims that recent deaths were due to drowning, families and activists dispute this, demanding justice and accountability. Since a controversial constitutional change in April 2024, more power has been centralized under former President Faure Gnassingbé, who now serves as President of the Council of Ministers. Togolese authorities have continued to restrict peaceful assembly and press freedom.
Francis Boniface filed that report. To some constitutional matters, first in Mali, where the country's transitional parliament has officially approved an extension of the military-led transition. The National Transitional Council has granted General Assimi Goïta a renewable 5-year mandate, allowing the military to remain in power until what officials describe as a full pacification of the country. The revised transitional charter was adopted yesterday, Thursday, marking a significant shift in Mali's political roadmap. Christopher Aticho has more details in this report.
The new charter, which will be promulgated in the coming days, grants General Assimi Goïta a 5-year term renewable as many times as necessary. Unanimously adopted by the members of the National Transitional Council, this law maintains him in power with the status of President of the Republic until the national territory is pacified, a decision welcomed by the Collective for the Defense of the Military, a supporter of the transition. Yunus Sumari is Secretary General of the National Transitional Council.
It is a responsible decision, and we just want to congratulate the head of state. For a long time, we have taken an idea, that is, the continuity of arsenic. So the securitization of the country first, and the rest will come later.
While the transitional bodies will continue to function until new institutions are established, critics of the transition denounced General Assimi Goita's continued power without an election. Ishmael Sako, an exiled opposition figure, denounces this violation of the constitution.
It is an immature, thoughtless decision that does not engage the Malian people. It confirms that we are in a dictatorship with serious violations of the constitution. So for our part, as political actors, we do not recognize Assimi Goita as president of the Republic of Mali.
Within civil society, the extension of the military transition is a non-event. Mamadou Sidibe is a civil activist.
Who is 5 years older or 5 years younger? My primary concern today is how, of course, things can go better for these people who have suffered and did nothing to deserve this fate today. Honestly, it was a non-event for me.
Note that this new provision authorizes the transitional president, members of the government, and the National Transition Council to be candidates in the presidential election, which will end the transition.
A report by WDR's Bamako correspondent Ali Ucham, voiced by Christopher Atichu. In Guinea, the draft new constitution provides for civil and criminal immunity for former heads of state for acts committed in the exercise of their duties. This clause is already raising questions among human rights organizations. They are concerned about the risk of impunity if the draft were to be approved in the upcoming referendum. Augustine Coley reports.
According to Article 74 of the draft constitution, former presidents of the Republic and their spouses shall receive material, financial privileges and protection on conditions defined by an organic law. This provision also applies to any individual who has served the office of head of state. Former presidents of the Republic shall also enjoy civil and criminal immunity for acts committed in the regular exercise of their duties. For Mamadi Kali Jallo, Country Director of Democracy Without Violence, a civil society organization, the provision sends a strong political signal that encourages change in government leadership. Meanwhile, Alpha Conde and other former heads of state have been cited in cases of violent crimes and human rights violations. If this provision is adopted as it stands, it could be interpreted as an attempt to provide judicial protection to former leaders, says Kali Jallo. Human rights organizations such as the Guinean Organization of Human Rights, OGDH, say they are currently reviewing the new constitution article by article before issuing any official statement.
Augustine Coley with that report filed in by WDR's Chono Alpha Ibrahim Balde. In Cote d'Ivoire, the ECOWAS pre-election mission deployed to the country ahead of the October 25 elections has concluded its work. During its stay, the delegation from the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, led by Professor Theodore Holo, former Minister of Foreign Affairs of Benin, met with political actors, civil society, the Electoral Commission, and the Ivorian head of state. The meeting with President Alassane Ouattara took place at the Presidential Palace in Abidjan. Abdullahi Hassan has more on the ECOWAS delegation's fact-finding in this report.
The ECOWAS delegation has wrapped up a fact-finding mission to Cote d'Ivoire aimed at assessing preparations for the upcoming elections. While no details of its meeting with President Alassane Ouattara were disclosed, the delegation held talks with key political actors, electoral bodies, and civil society groups. Requested by Ivorian authorities, the mission sought to evaluate the electoral process, identify support needs, and offer recommendations to ensure free, fair, and peaceful elections. Professor Theodore Holo, who led the delegation, stressed that implementing any recommendations remains the sovereign responsibility of national authorities. The delegation met with the African People's Party PPACI, led by former President Laurent Gbagbo, and later with opposition coalition CAPCI at PDCI headquarters. Simon Gbagbo, speaking for the coalition, voiced serious concerns, warning that democracy is in danger in Cote d'Ivoire and calling for inclusive and transparent elections. Following similar visits by the African Union, AU, and European Union, ECOWAS is the third major body to send a pre-election mission to Cote d'Ivoire, underscoring growing international interest in avoiding electoral instability.
Abdullahi Hassan reporting there.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
In Nigeria, reactions have continued to trail the formation of a new political alliance ahead of the country's 2027 general elections. The move of which saw political heavyweights uniting under the African Democratic Congress ADC is already stirring conversations across the country. The political stakeholders and citizens are watching closely, especially as Nigeria's democracy faces increasing scrutiny over electoral credibility, political inclusiveness, and institutional accountability. WDR's correspondent Usman Omar has updates in this report.
As Nigeria inches closer to the 2027 general elections, the recent emergence of a new political alliance under the African Democratic Congress ADC is sparking debate and reflection on the future of the country's democracy. The alliance, comprising some opposition figures, former vice president, former governors, and civil servant-aligned politicians, is being viewed by many as an attempt to challenge the dominance of the ruling All Progressives Congress APC. Political analyst Wisdom Aka tells WADR that the timing of the alliance is crucial.
It shows that there is belief, because it is only when people believe in a process that will come out en masse the way they have come to take part in. Don't forget that there were times when coming out to participate in democratic processes was a difficult thing. They're talking about the impact. It's too early. It's too early for us to begin to draw conclusions.
Across the streets of Abuja, Lagos, and Port Harcourt, Nigerians expressed mixed reactions.
Before now, it was looking like a one-party system where the APC was too sure of coasting to victory. But with this coalition, I think it will give the APC a run for their money. And I think most Nigerians are ready for 2027 now. Now we are talking politics, because several interests are now going to come up to show their might in the ring.
From what I can see on ground, the coalition seems to be dead on arrival, because there are people who have so many vested interests. They may clash when the time comes. Who will be the flag bearer?
Observers say the development, if sustained, could reinvigorate public interest in electoral processes and restore some measure of faith in participatory governance, two critical elements currently in deficit. With voter apathy and political disillusionment still haunting Nigeria's democratic space, many say the months ahead will test not just the resilience of this alliance, but also the appetite of the Nigerian electorate for genuine political alternatives. For Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, Usman Umar reporting from Abuja.
In a surprising diplomatic move, U.S. President Donald Trump is set to meet with the leaders of Gabon, Guinea-Bissau, Liberia, Mauritania, and Senegal from July 9 to 11. The mini-summit signals Washington's renewed interest in Africa following a recent U.S. brokered peace deal between Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of Congo. While past talks with African leaders have been tense, including one with South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa in May, next week's gathering is expected to focus largely on trade and investment opportunities. It is worth noting that President Trump has business engagement a priority in U.S.-African relations, shifting emphasis away from traditional humanitarian and development aid. Senegalese political analyst Professor Gorgui Dieng gives his take on what this summit could mean for Africa.
I believe that the meeting will be centered on the economy, because I believe that after trying to readjust the relationship between the United States and Africa, Donald Trump is now seeking to reorient on the relationships between his America and then Africa. And he believes that the 5 heads of states he has chosen are the right people who can help him reach his goals. And those goals, as I said, are economic ones, centered on the defense of the interests of America. In Senegal, for example, the new president is defending what we call sovereignty. That's to say, Senegal for Senegal. And he's defending the idea of America for America. So there is some similarity between the new president of Senegal and the U.S. president. So he believes that Diomaye Faye is the right person to help him achieve what he wants to achieve in Africa. That's to say, help America take advantage as much as possible of the resources in West Africa, especially as we have gas and oil in Senegal, and we have gas and oil in Mauritania. This is one of the reasons why Mauritania has been chosen. And there are other countries that have been chosen, for example, Gabon. Gabon is in Central Africa, one of the most stable countries in Central Africa, even though they had just come out of a major military regime. Despite all this, its economy is strong, based on oil.
Well, stay tuned for more details in our guest interview segment, as plans for a broader US-Africa summit in September are also being discussed, though not yet confirmed. You are listening to Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Here is a reminder of our top stories. Amnesty International condemns the crackdown on demonstrations in Togo and calls for an urgent independent investigation. Mali's transitional parliament grants the military a renewable 5-year mandate in major political shift. The ECOWAS pre-election mission in Cote d'Ivoire concludes assessment tour ahead of October 25 polls. And regional experts anchor the U.S. 5 African Nations Summit on economic and resource control agenda. Still ahead, we have guest interview and sports news. Please stay with us.
Fresh and breaking news all the time. Hear it first as the news breaks, only on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
We head to the Gambia, where the government has launched a major crackdown on ghost workers after an audit revealed a staggering loss of nearly $24 million, or its estimate of $334,000 in 2024. This involves over 1,400 civil servants in various government ministries who could not be accounted for. Here is an excerpt of Babukar Boy, the Gambia's Minister of Public Service, responding to questions at the parliamentary session in Banjul.
The Ministry of Public Service, through the Accountant General's Department, attempted to recover 3 months' salaries from a total of 1,430 staff who could not be physically identified as part of the first phase of the 2024 staff audit, comprising 3 ministries of basic education, health and agriculture, livestock, and food security. The salaries were paid to these staff through 16 financial institutions totaling $23,976,258. Only about $2 million have so far been recovered from the financial institutions, whereas we are still pursuing some financial institutions to refund the said amounts to government, leading to the freezing of their affected customers' accounts. Many have reported that most of the funds had been withdrawn before receipt of our directive. One of the banks identified to have received over 7 million could only refund just over 1.6 million to the Treasury main account. We are also facing some challenge from some banks arguing that they need the consent of their customers or a court order to be able to release the available funds. In this regard, we have written to the Solicitor General and Legal Secretary to intervene and obtain us a court order to recover these monies from the financial institutions. Given our resolve to recover these funds, legal actions will eventually be instituted against these individuals if necessary.
Gambia's Public Service Minister, Babukar Boy. Now, in Ghana, the Tertiary Education Workers Union of Ghana has declared an indefinite strike effective Thursday, July 3, after the expiration of a 7-day ultimatum issued to the authorities on June 24. The union says the industrial action has become necessary following what it described as a blatant disregard for democratic principles and rights of the majority union. The TEU justifies its action as a means to safeguard fairness, transparency, and accountability in the governance of tertiary education. WDR's Nadi Tete has the details.
Management of public universities in Ghana will now have to make alternative arrangements for critical support services on campus following an indefinite strike declared by the Tertiary Education Workers Union of Ghana, TEU-GH. The industrial action is expected to disrupt security, sanitation, operations of university basic schools, schools, health services at university hospitals, fire stations, and several administrative and academic support services. The strike stems from what TEWGH describes as the egregious and unjustifiable decision by the Ghana Tertiary Education Commission GTEC to recognize a minority union, TEWTUC, as the official workers' representative on the governing councils of public universities. TEWGH, which claims majority membership, insists the decision undermines its legitimate right to representation. Here is National Chairman of TEWGH, Abdullahi Suleiman Rahman.
What will get us to call off the strike is for the government, the Minister of Education, to call GTEC to order, to let them know that the actions and inactions of GTEC will not resolve this issue, but it will end up escalating. And we don't want that. We're not happy about what is happening. And no one is interested in going on strike. But sometimes when you are compelled and you have any point in turning to, that's why we have to get to where we are today.
The dispute between the two unions dates back to 2022 when TEWGH formally broke away from TEWTUC. Since then, both factions have been locked in a battle over which group rightfully represents tertiary education workers on university governing councils. The Ghana Tertiary Education Commission says its decision is guided by legal advice from the Attorney General, who maintains that the University Act grants recognition to TEWTUC. But TEWGH has rejected this interpretation, describing it as undemocratic and dismissive of their majority standing within the workforce. For WADR, Nadidi Teti, Accra.
In Liberia, the House of Representatives has approved the ECOWAS Treaty on the Dakar-Abidjan corridor. This decision, made during the Assembly's 15th-day sitting on Thursday, comes after excessive evaluation by the Joint Committee on Transport, Public Works and Rural Development and Judiciary. The committee underscored the treaty's potential benefits, including improved interconnectivity, economic progress and collaborative efforts among ECOWAS countries, particularly Liberia. They emphasized the necessity of formalizing this protocol to combat drug trafficking and ensure public health safety. After the report presentation, Representative James Colley stressed the importance of the treaty and put forth a motion to have it passed.
Taking into consideration that the committee, those appointed on those committees are people of express opinion and have done due diligence and recommending to this plenary for subsequent passage, I say to you, please permit us implement the recommendation of the committee. Taking into consideration that during the process of the deliberations of these instruments in committee room, lawmakers can have the opportunity to give their input to committee members, and also those inputs can be taken into consideration by committee members in ensuring that the best legislative due diligence are done to these instruments. I move, if I can obtain a second, that the recommendations are put forth by those listed named committees be accepted by this plenary, and that the second reading of this bill constitutes second and third reading passage to be forwarded to the Senate for the appropriate legislative action, if I can obtain a second.
Meanwhile, the treaty has been forwarded to the Liberian Senate for further legislative action and final approval.
Politics, analysis on major news, social matters, and all. This is The Guest.
In this guest interview segment, let's head back to the U.S.-Africa relations because in a surprising diplomatic move, U.S. President Donald Trump is set to meet with the leaders of Gabon, Guinea-Bissau, Liberia, Mauritania, Senegal from July 9 to 11. The mid-summit signals Washington's renewed interest in Africa following a recent U.S.-brokered peace deal between Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of Congo. While past talks with African leaders have been tense, including one with South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa in May, next week's gathering is expected to focus lightly on trade and investment opportunities. It is worth noting that President Trump has made business engagement a priority in U.S.-Africa relations, shifting emphasis away from traditional humanitarian and development aid. Senegalese political analyst Professor Gorgigeng gives his take on what this summit could mean for Africa.
The summit, as Trump sees it, is a summit that can help America be great again or greater again. So Trump is defending the interests of America. That is something we have got to understand first. Trump has not convened this meeting to help Africa or to help African countries. No, he has ask them to come in order to help America find new avenues that can open up some economic development for America, using whatever is possible in West Africa, the resources, etc., but also some investment, because America would also want to open up to West Africa and probably to the rest of Africa in order to have some control. Because if you withdraw West Africa from Africa, there is no humanitarian aid now. There is no development help now. But what we can start now is investment, asking American investors to go to Africa and invest, because we have oil, we have gas, and we have other resources that has not been exploited so far. So it's a great opportunity for America to invest in Africa and control the economy as much as possible, because being present with its investors will help America have some presence in Africa. If you consider that regarding humanitarian aid, regarding other aspect of the relationship between Africa and America, Trump has severed them. But after severing those ties, he wants to establish a new relationship, a new type of cooperation that will help America be present, but economically. And this is something he thinks he can achieve this through those states. But those states also can take advantage of their investment, because they have got to diversify their partners. They don't only have got to rely on Turkey, on France, on China, on Russia. They have got to open up to America, because American investors also can bring in something profitable to the economy of West Africa, because we have a lot of resources in almost all the countries. If I can cite the example of Guinea, Conakry. So the investment of brought in by American investors can be something positive, but it must be based on win-win partnership.
Could this summit help ease those tensions or influence U.S. immigration policy is having towards the region? I mean, most countries in West Africa today are facing or are threatened by travel restrictions. Could this ease the tension?
Trump is centering everything on the interests of the United States of America, which he wants to be great again. So Africans also must have the same attitude. So they have got to defend their own interests. If Trump wants to cooperate with them, if Trump wants to lay the foundation of a new type of cooperation between America and Africa, African leaders also must defend their interests. And one of the interests is not to accept the new immigration policy established by America. You cannot say that I want to cooperate with you, I want to be your partner, and then prevent my citizens, my nationals, from entering your country. This is not coherent.
Well, Professor Gorgui Dieng is a Senegalese political analyst. Well, let's bring you some sport news, because the 13th edition of the CAF Women's Africa Cup of Nations is set to kickstart tomorrow, Saturday, July 5 in Morocco, and promises to be one of the most spectacular in history. At home, the Atlas Lionesses of Morocco are dreaming of revenge 2 years after a final loss in Portis. On the other hand, South Africa's Banyana will defend its crown with the determination of a champion now expected at every turn. And the 9-time Super Falcons of Nigeria intend to regain their throne, and around this historic trio are a pack of ambitious seasoned teams, including Senegal Lionesses as well as DRC, ready to shake up the established order. And it is sad news for Barcelona fans, because Nico Williams has extended his contract at Atleti. And we have come to the end of this edition of Newslink from West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Mustafa Sek and Umu Danyogo for the technical assistance. Do interact with us via our social media platforms, X and Instagram at WADR News, and on Facebook, WADR English Service, and stream live at WADR.org. That's coming up at 1 p.m. Of course, is the second edition of Info Chevu, our comprehensive news bulletin in French with Mustafa Jakite. I am Sankule Jibril Janko. Good afternoon.
And many thanks to you for listening to Newslink via Hot 104.3 FM, Newmi FM 94.0,
Hilltop Radio 104.7 FM,
and Veritas Radio 102.9 in Banjul, the Gambia. We also appreciate our listeners in Liberia via Alternative Youth Radio 98.9 FM, Lofa County.
Radio Kagama 94.5 FM, Nibe County, DCN Radio 91.3 FM, Riverside County, Wakat FM Radio, Banga, Liberia, Radio Gulf FM 91.3 Sierra Leone.
For you listening